Welcome to Life Through My Lens with your host, Keyshawn Scott. So today we have an extraordinary guest. His name is J Christopher Neal, and he has an extraordinary story. So tonight we're going to talk about the dirt nap experience, the rebirth, renewal, and the discovery. We're going to take a look at life through his lens, purpose through chaos, and how you can heal through community. So I need you to get your pen and your paper and your notebook ready to take some notes, because we all know that information changes situation. So as we take a look through life through his lens, I need you to stay tuned, and I'll see you soon. Welcome to Life Through My Lens with your host, Keyshawn Scott. So today we have J Christopher. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, first of all, to have you on the show.
Thank you.
So who are you? Who is J Christopher?
J Christopher. So I'm an artist and an educator. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. I came to New York out of my master's degree at Howard University to be in the art world, to exhibit and to show and whatnot. Did that for quite a few years successfully. Got into education, started doing youth development work with young Black and brown men. So I guess, like I said, I'm an artist and educator, basically very interested in expanding ideas and minds of people.
And that's beautiful. So we got you on the show for a reason, right? For a reason. And the last time we had a conversation, I was so impacted by what you were saying, the conversation. It was so impactful and so insightful that we had to bring you on the show. We had to. Doesn't matter, we had to bring you here. So tell me more about what we were speaking about, the dirt nap, the renewal, the rebirth, and the discovery. Like, I would love for our audience to know more about that.
Yeah, man. So a couple years ago, 2.5 years exactly, November 16th, I was hospitalized for anxiety and depression. And it was an experience that I had never had before. So I was really, like, people think of anxiety as being like, you just had a nervous moment. Like, no, it's not like that. Anxiety is like you are scared, you're afraid, like you're not, your sense of well-being is just totally gone, And so I had this experience where I was losing sleep, and it got to the point where I need to go to the hospital because I hadn't slept in 4 or 5 days, And prior to that, I had been doing a number of different things in the city. I was the first ever bi-identified Grand Marshal Pride Parade. So I was doing a lot of stuff in like kind of LGBTQ politics. And I was running youth development programs for a small nonprofit. So I had like 6 or 7 programs I was managing and the staff. I was in a polyamorous relationship, if you're familiar with that term. So I had like several, I had a very complex emotional situation going on. And all of that was just a lot of holding space for a lot of people, a lot of things. And it took me to what I call that wall. And that wall is what I came to call the dirt nap, because, partly because I like 90s gangster mafia movies, and every time you went down, every time they said
that makes both of us.
So every time they said somebody was going to die, they're going to go down for the dirt nap. But I was thinking more or less about this scene in Black Panther where he goes through a spiritual process of renewal, which I'll get into later.
I remember.
I put those two together, and what happened to me and for me in that experience was actually a spiritual renewal. It seemed like tragedy. It seemed like, but it was actually the tragic face of opportunity. It really wasn't that at all. And I was able to, I was kind of sent into a process, I should say.
So tell me about the tragedy. Like, what did that look like?
It looked like not being able to get on crowded trains. So I'm a 230-pound, 6'1" brother who ain't never been afraid of shit.
We can't see that.
I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I'm all of this kind of stuff. I was just very much so for me to be afraid to get on a train, to be afraid to think that I'm walking down the street and people can see that fear. To be sort of like shut in, like you didn't want to go out and stuff like that. And then there's stuff like you can't sleep. You have really bad. I had really bad digestive issues, and not to be melodramatic, there was a point where I thought, am I going to die? Because I had never felt this kind of feeling inside where you just can't control your thinking and your thought process. Your mind is running rapid. that's what it looked like.
So when did you know, and I understand that a lot of people go through that process. And the beautiful part of this whole entire interview is the fact that you're going to help somebody that's watching this. So when you were going through your process, when did you realize that it's time for a change? Like I need to do something different.
I don't know that I did notice that. What I think is, and one of the things I was very excited about talking about today is I think that there was a point in which my ancestors, which are part of my spiritual practice, kind of stepped in. So when I was put into the hospital, they assigned me a bunk, like a bed or whatever in the ward. And let me tell you something. Nothing makes you realize how not crazy you are more than being in a ward full of crazy motherfuckers. I was like, okay, I'm not this bad. Like I was like, let me out, so I'm good. But there was a giant number 5 painted over my bed, and so in terms of numerology, 5 is my life number. Yeah. But 5 is always also the number of a deity in a West African spiritual tradition called Ifa, whose name is Oshun. Okay. So when I saw the 5 on the wall, I was like, okay, this is not about what I think it's about. Because it just immediately resonated with me that there's a reason why this is happening like this, and this is about something deeper. So when I got out of the hospital, which was only for a couple of days, I was there for observation. It was also where I found out that I was diagnosed as bipolar, which how I found out was the nurse came and said, here's your bipolar medicine. And I was like, I'm not bipolar.
Like the movies when you like,
it's like, okay. I was like, all right. So they give you medication before they even tell you what the f is going on. Excuse my French. But when I got out the hospital, some of my first, I was going to work out at the gym because the gym is like a very important part of my mental, emotional health. The first thing I wanted to do was go back to the gyms. I was headed to the gym and I ran into a friend of mine named Anyawu. And her friend ran a apothecary, which is like, where you get herbs and stuff like that. And so I knew that the drugs that they gave me, which was like, Depakote and some other shit, like it was a mood stabilizer and some other stuff. I didn't want to take those drugs. Like I just knew I didn't want to take those. So I ran into her at what I call the Crossroads, which is the Atlantic Terminal. If you're familiar with that part of Brooklyn, the Atlantic Terminal is where everything comes in. So, including the Apple Store. But so I ran into her and I was like, just in a conversation with her going up the stairs and me going down the stairs, kind of had this really quick conversation where I said, listen, I want to come to the apothecary because I just got out of the hospital and they gave me these drugs. I don't want to take them. I know I can do this herbally. And she's like, can you come Sunday? Like really quick. I don't think we even stopped long enough. She was on her way somewhere. I was on my way somewhere. Later on that day, she called me and asked me if I wanted to meet at a restaurant to talk. And so we met at this restaurant up in Flatbush. And first thing she said to me was, I don't know you that well, because Ayawo and I had worked together doing anti-bias, anti-racism work, which is part of what I do. She said, but I want you to know that there's nothing wrong with you. And I was like, and she said, you're going through an initiation. She turned out to be one of 2 or 3 people who randomly just said, you're going through a spiritual initiation. Consequently, I was connected to like a Reiki master, to Reiki, which is energy work done with your hands. I was sent to an acupuncturist. I went to the apothecary. So the way I figure it, bro, is that I could have met someone who said, oh, try this medication. Or why don't you try my psychiatrist out? But what was put in my path by my ancestors were holistic practitioners and people who led me and continued to nurture me down this spiritual journey. Yeah. So my question to you, right, is do you have to be in a position to recognize that? Because some people could go through that same exact process that you're going through and not even recognize it. Take the pills, be diagnosed, it will be still at the hospital today. So do you believe that you were in a position? I think I was in a position, but I think it's a couple of different things. So clearly I was front loaded a little bit. Like my daddy was agnostic growing up and my mama was Sunday church goer. So if I wanted to play football, I had to go to church. But my daddy was like religion is bullshit. So I had a lot of room as a very young man to like explore spiritual practice and religion. So I was already someone very interested in spirituality. But the other part is that I had elders. And so this is the importance of community, which we'll talk about a little bit later, like community and healing, is I had elders who were able to step forward and say, you're not, what you're going through is a spiritual practice. The same as T'Challa had when he got ready to meet his ancestors. It's his elders who took him into the spiritual world in the Black Panther. So, those elders are very important.
And that's wonderful. So I want to know, right? I'm big on obedience. So how
I'm not.
you have to be because you have to be at some point, because it feels like if somebody's telling you that you're going through a spiritual, what was it again? Renewal, right? You could have been defensive.
Yeah.
You could have said, no, you know what, I'm not, I don't know what you're going, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So my thing is, do you think obedience, not even obedience, just having respect for others and knowing where you need to be, do you think that has a role to play in where you are headed?
The word obedience is problematic for me, but what I will say is that there are two things at play. First of all, the only difference between faith and trust is there is no difference. Faith is just spiritualized trust. So what I had was trust. The other thing is that the thing about the dirt nap, and this is when it happens to everybody, is that you're usually at a place where you don't have the energy to resist. You don't have the energy to be defensive. It's like it's so f***ed up, excuse my French again, that it's like you're willing to acquiesce, you're willing to submit to spirit to help you forward. It's just like many people who go through stuff, they end up being a preacher in the church, they end up getting saved. Everybody gets saved after some shit happens to them. And we can make a joke out of that, but the point is that at the point in which you are at rock bottom, when you hit that wall, when you are afraid for your life, then you don't have as much defense against spirit when spirit comes forward. You can, other than your own doubt of what you feel, and that's about trust.
So when did you feel like you were hitting rock bottom? Like it was like enough is enough?
When they told me that I was gonna have to live out the rest of my life taking Depakote and Seroquel.
And what was your reaction? Like how did that make you feel?
Weak. Like it made me feel, and I know that's a very sort of juvenile sort of definition of weakness. I'm not trying to limit weakness to some minor shit, but like that this was the new reality, that my new normal was to be afraid. My new normal was to be scared. My new normal was to like, and don't forget, these antidepressants and shit, they, as far as your libido, like you don't have any desire, you have all kinds of ED and all kinds of shit. Like this is my new normal. I mean, I'm 53 years old, but I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah.
So, plus just the fact that I've always been a very sort of, I'm an Aries, I see, I conquer, I make it happen, so to feel afraid about the possibilities, afraid about the future, that's enough for me to be like, all right, ancestors, what you want me to do? Yeah.
And one more thing, you don't look a day over 50. I don't know where, I need to see some ID. I need to see some ID. So I want to continue what we're saying right now, and this is an amazing conversation. So before we continue, let's take a quick break, and we'll get back to you in a few.
Mac Shack, New York, dedicated to providing a unique dining experience by offering classic, seasonal, and modern creative macaroni and cheese flavors. Find their locations at macshacknewyork.com. That's MACSHACKNY.com.
Brooklyn Commons has been tremendous for my business. It allowed me to be able to have a space for me to be able to do my creative work.
We've got architects here, we've got notaries, tax people. If you need an answer to a question, you really don't have to leave Brooklyn Commons.
It's really nice to come and be part of a community and make friends, even though I don't share space with my coworkers.
We loved how open it was. My team was really receptive to the colors and how bright it is.
Also space all over tables, chairs, couches, and things of that sort. So if someone does want to work more reclined, or someone wants to work outside, or someone wants to work at a larger table, we have the space to do that really easily without having to leave the building at all.
I use Brooklyn Commons because it is a wonderful creative environment.
We love working here. I've got a small, tight-knit team of 10 people. What we love most about it is that everything is provided, from the coffee in the morning to the photocopy services. It's perfect for a small organization.
Easy to Eat, an e-commerce solution specializing in digital marketing for the restaurant industry, offering a full suite of restaurant technology products, which range from online ordering, POS systems, web design, digital marketing, and social media campaigns.
Welcome back to Life Through My Lens. We're here with J Christopher. So we left off talking about the dirt nap and the process of the rebirth, the renewal, and discovery. So what I want to touch on is the purpose through chaos, because you were telling, you said a lot of amazing things that I'm sure the viewers are going to love. They're going to take notes, write down, and it's going to help them on their process. And at the end of this, they're going to find you and they're going to reach out to you. But tell me more about the purpose through the chaos.
Yeah. I mean, specifically, like finding purpose in chaos. I mean, because, so listen, most people, when they think about a spiritual journey, they think about floating on a pillow somewhere and like being enlightened and having this moment where there's just
absolutely.
flowers and candy everywhere and rainbows and whatnot. But that's not what a spiritual process is. A spiritual process is a series of adversities. It's up and down. It is emotionally dynamic, to use a word that's pleasant, but it's rambunctious. You find yourself up one day, you might find yourself in tears the next, because what's happening is you're being shown yourself, and you're only shown yourself through adversity. We don't learn about ourselves through the good shit. We learn it through ourselves through the things we challenge and struggle through and are challenged by, that show us who we really are in that moment. That's the whole, I was in a fraternity while I was in college. That's the whole idea behind hazing process, right? Because the adversity is what shows you who you are. So yeah.
And you know what's so funny? I love that adversity is what shows you who you are, because with my wife and I, right, it's easy to say I love you and to be happy, but it's through the tough times that really shows this true strength. Like, who's going to apologize first? Like, who's going to say I'm sorry? So it's through those ups and downs, those roller coaster moments that really identify the strength and the quality of our relationship. So when you're going through your dirt nap, your chaos, right? What were you thinking? Like, what were the things that were going through your mind?
Well, the first thing you try to do is to recover everything you think you've lost. Right, because these are the things that have defined you. So, like, whatever I lost in the process, which were relationships, closeness, my job situation changed. I was the senior director of youth programs at a nonprofit. That position, due to funding, disappeared. So there were a lot of things that were these external factors that define who J Christopher was, and I didn't think I was that connected to these. I'd like to think that I was connected to something deeper. But when everything gets stripped away, you find yourself wondering, well, who am I? Like, if I'm not this to you, or this to these people, or this to these people over here, then who am I? So I think that it's the process, like the whole thing of renewal and rebirth for a person that's already alive. Has to be the stripping of all that shit that you think makes you who you are, so that you can be born into who you really are. It's like, I think, I don't know what Bible verse it is, because I don't really read the Bible, but in Christianity, to be reborn unto Christ means to die unto your worldly self and reborn in spirit.
Yes, of course.
I'm talking about the same thing. I'm simply not naming Christ necessarily. I'm saying that your spiritual transformation can take place through whatever you believe in. But the idea is that you die unto your worldly self, and you're reborn in spirit, and from that you are powered forward.
So do you think that's a process towards your purpose? And if it is, what does it look like?
Well, for me in particular, it was a process towards my purpose, because as I'm doing right now, part of my purpose is to spread this conversation. And because I think that oftentimes, particularly as Black men, adversities come across your life.
Absolutely.
And having people in your life and in your world who can stop you and say, yo, this is not what you think it is. This is actually an opportunity. I know but this is an opportunity to retool, to rethink about who you are in the world, to think about your gifts and your talents and what the purpose is. And I'm a good facilitator. I'm a fairly well-spoken dude. I can write. I'm an artist and an educator. So how do I use that towards the liberation of my people? How do I use that towards the healing of my people? Came out of my process.
And can I get some?
Yeah, bro.
I think that's what people fail to realize is that we need to be around more people like that, right? And that's the next, the next step that we're going to talk about a little later with the community and that part, because I can't wait for that part.
Well, can I add something right quick?
Add it.
That is that's the thing about spiritual renewal in the United States. Because this is a capitalist country, right? Very individualistic. So you got rows upon rows of self-help books that tell you that every individual is supposed to read about their own individual experience. You can be a better person. You can be rich. You can be famous.
Yeah.
But this quality of renewal and spiritual growth happens in community. And so it's not just about you, it's about you and everyone you touch, everyone who comes into your life, everyone you impact.
Yeah.
And not just the people you think you impact, but the people that you don't even know you impact.
That's
so
it.
that idea that it's just about your success, your prosperity, your awareness.
Yeah.
Like that's very individualized and that's very Western. And I'm an African.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't
And
roll
when
for
you
me.
build something like that, do you know the power? I'm saying if you know the power of it, or of course you do.
I'm discovering the power of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you got a taste of it. You know what community really is, and a lot of people don't.
I know what it can be. And so if we're going to have an aspirational self, like my aspirational self understands what it can be. And so that's the work, right? The work is to not sit isolated in my studio and make art just for myself and talk about this shit to myself and write my little books or just post something online anonymously. Like the work is actually to be out there in community, particularly among Black men saying, listen, we can hold space for each other.
Yeah.
We can hold each other accountable. We can be there when each other is in these spaces of the dirt nap, and we can take each other to the spirit world and back.
Listen,
do that.
sorry, I'm gonna cut you off right there.
No, it's cool.
Because community is next, and you're about to go in. I don't want you to go in.
Yeah, I won't go in. I won't go in.
Let's just think on purpose and chaos.
Yes.
So a lot of people, like, what advice would you give someone who's going through like massive chaos? And since you are a product of that, but you came out of that, right? You rebirthed out of that. You were renewed out of that. What advice would you give somebody who's like struggling right now and they feel like their world is over and they don't have that support system?
It's
hard.
So that's a difficult question.
Yeah.
Because you just said all the things they don't
and then
have.
They said, look, forget about the support system. Let's see if they do.
Here's what I will say is that oftentimes I hear people say, well, you need to go to therapy.
Yeah.
I'm not a super big fan of therapy. Now, I'm not saying therapy isn't good, but therapy to me is about identifying where the issues are.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, once you identify those issues, there is a spiritual component. So my advice would be that along with seeking medical or psychological or psychospiritual help, to actually seek spiritual guidance as well. Like find out who you are. Find out what's going on for you spiritually at the same time. Like my brother, I have a relationship with my brother now that I haven't had in 15 years. And it's partly because I began to have conversations with him about his spiritual life and spiritual practice because he's been angry for a long time. He's had a lot of adversity in his life. He has every reason to think the world is against him. And I have every reason to believe that he can come out of that, but it's not going to be through a therapist. It's going to be through someone who's able to deal with his heart and deal with his soul as well as his mind, if that makes any sense.
And what would that person look like? Would it be like someone like you?
It could be someone like me, but a lot of times so listen, when your ancestors, in my experience, stand up for you, like I told you, the number 5, Oshun, all this kind of stuff, like all you need to do is acknowledge them. Once you acknowledge them, then everything you need will be put in your path. Now, I told you that I left the hospital and ran across a Yawu who led me to the Reiki person who led me to this, who led me to that. That was not me being lucky. That's not coincidence. That's spirit. So really, I mean, there's this piece about trust, bruh.
Yeah.
There's this piece about knowing that you are connected to something bigger than you and greater than you that's guiding you. And I don't mean to get super esoteric. I understand all of that. And that doesn't necessarily help a person who is, let's say, on the brink of suicide. But and I know you're not asking me that because that's a whole other kind of conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like when you're thinking about your team, your healing team needs to have more than Western medical folks on it. Needs to have people who can say, okay, let's see what's going on for you spiritually. You know, what do you believe? What do you think?
Yeah.
What are the stories you tell yourself over and over again?
Huh. And a lot of us tell ourselves negative stories over
Absolutely.
and over again, and then it puts us back in, that state of mind of depression, right? So how big, I know you're big, I said how big, but how big are you with accountability? Because we touched the topic, and I know that's very important. So how big are you with that in your life right now?
So there are about 4 pillars that that are important to me in my life. One is trust, one is vulnerability, the other is authenticity, and the other is accountability. So you don't have to be a baked cake. One of my favorite motivational speakers tells me, you have to be a baked cake. We all get to be a hot mess and extraordinary at the same time. So accountability is a big piece of that.
Yeah.
In fact, you cannot heal if you're not able to be accountable to who you've been, while at the same time holding who you can become. So you have to hold both of those things at the same time. I can be this, and I'm on my way to this, and I have regrettably, possibly, been this motherfucker too. So like accountability is very important. And I think a lot of times holding someone accountable, and being held accountable doesn't have to be necessarily seen as an attack or insult. Oftentimes when somebody holds us accountable, we get defensive.
Very.
And I think a lot of that has to do with our own issues around the thing we're being held accountable for. But like when somebody holds you accountable, they love you.
Yeah.
If they don't, they won't give a excuse my French.
And that is exactly what people need to realize.
Yeah.
I hope they realize that. I just hope people realize that, because if somebody loves you and somebody cares about you, they're going to hold you accountable. It doesn't matter if it's bad or if it's good. They're going to hold you accountable because they love you and they genuinely care about you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the beautiful part. So with that accountability, right? How is that accountability playing a part of the community?
So the community is what holds you accountable in all best scenario. Now, I'm not saying the community, let's not think about just like we're not talking about a neighborhood. We're not talking about where you live geographically. We're talking about a group of people who you form with, who are like-minded, like-spirited, like-hearted. That's your community.
Yeah.
So your community is necessary because as we go through, so we're not doing this shit in a vacuum. We're in a world. We're in a world that is polluting and toxic and all kinds of things. So it's easy, listen, I'm not a spiritual being. I'm a human being. So I have all kinds of vices and things that draw me in and want to draw my attention and distract me from the path of spirit and stuff. And so the people that are in your life that hold you accountable, the ones who say, yeah, that's good too, but think about this. Or remember this. When you take this job for $100,000 a year, the question is it aligned with your principles and who you are? That's accountability.
We're going to stop you right there, because that right there is beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's going to bring us to our next segment that we're going to go. Right now, we're going to take a short break, but we're going to have more with Jay and his principles right after these short breaks.
Smith & Company, providing quality legal services with a focus on immigration, criminal, and civil litigation. Call us at 718-874-5999 or visit us at 4919 Church Avenue, corner of Church and Utica Avenues in Brooklyn, New York.
Welcome back to Life Through My Lens. We're here with Jay, and we left off on community. Right? And it was very powerful, and I know I stopped you earlier. My apologies, but it was so amazing that we had to encompass all of that right now. So Tell me a little bit more about the community and the healing process of, keeping yourself accountable.
Got it. So I'm gonna step back a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think I might have shared with you that I do racial equity work. So
Absolutely.
I actually teach teachers around the city how to talk about race in their classrooms and how the school systems actually talk about race and actually address racial inequities in their schools. And what I always say in workshops is that this work is done in community. It's done in relationship. It's not done as an individual going home and pondering their navel about.
Yeah.
It's done in conversation.
Yeah.
So there's an educator out on the West Coast. He works in the Bay Area around San Francisco. His name is Sean Jenwright. And I kind of follow him as an educator. He works with young black and brown boys in Oakland. And he talks about in one of his videos an experiment that was done. I believe it was done at Berkeley, but don't quote me on that.
A lot of experiments.
Yeah. He's done an experiment where they actually they took this plant and they put it inside of this kind of plastic see-through box, and they pumped the box full of all these toxic fumes. And so the idea was to sort of to study the plant and see how the plant reacted to the toxic fumes and see what it did in terms of enzymes and so forth and so on. 9 times out of 10, the plant died. So one day they put several plants in the same box. I don't know how they came to do this, but they did that. And they pumped the box full of all these fumes. And what they found is that the plants they worked together, they pulled different nutrients from the soil, and they created enzymes that actually detoxified the environment inside the box.
Wow. Okay.
So what that told me in that little story is that we have the opportunity to detoxify our environment, but only if we work together in community. Individually, we can't do it. So we can all set up our own platforms and talk our own stuff or whatever, but if we're not working in community we have the power to actually detoxify the environment.
That's powerful.
And even as a man, my work as an artist is done around manhood, masculinity, and myth.
Yeah.
And so I believe that we as men of color we have the opportunity to actually rescue masculinity from patriarchy and together create what does a detoxifying masculinity look like? We hear about toxic masculinity everywhere, but what does detoxifying masculinity actually look like? That conversation can only happen in community.
Yeah.
So your spiritual development, your spiritual awakening is also something that happens in community. And the more community there is, the more power it has to actually detoxify the environment.
So, what's the not even the benefit? What's the downfall of not working together?
Listen, man, if you don't pick a newborn baby up within the first few months of his life, it'll die. We're symbiotic beings. So isolation is a survival strategy that people often use, and I think it's also often connected to having been emotionally hurt, trauma, things that want to make us turn inward and away from community because of trust. I don't trust you. Why should I fucking talk to you? Why should I share my life with you? And in the black community in particular, or brown communities in general, we have a whole tradition of not putting your dirty laundry out there. Everybody got a crazy Uncle Fred live up in Aunt Martha's house up upstairs in the attic.
I got one.
You take him a plate, don't nobody talk to him, but we don't talk about mental health in our communities. We don't talk about that because that's the dirty laundry. So there's a whole way that isolation becomes a survival strategy culturally and a survival strategy in terms of our own vulnerability in community.
So why do you think we don't talk about these things? Why?
I mean, I think that's a longer conversation,
That's a long
man.
list. We
I
have to
think,
do another show for that.
yeah. I think that has to do with a history of enslavement. I think that has to do with I think that has to do with how we feel we need to show up in the world to survive. As people of color in a society's not set up for our survival. I think it has a lot to do with all of that. Yeah.
Every man for themselves kind of world. It's like the community part, I 100% agree upon. And I understand that. And I'm all 100% for that. But then there's some people out here, and I know that you probably met some of them or spoke to some of them, who are so ignorant and don't understand that working as a team, working as a collective is much better than working apart. It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's like...
And some of them have high positions in the Department of Education. You know what I'm saying? So I run into them all the time. I work with them all the time. But listen, I mean, I'm talking about liberation. Yeah, liberation is if my personal liberation means nothing if you're not free, if your wife's not free, if Nick's not free, if we all not free, what does my liberation mean? That's not liberation. Yeah. So we're talking about something that, that's why, healing I say healing in community, not healing and community. Healing in community, meaning however you do it, even this thing you're doing here, this space you're doing here, you're creating content that's going to go out and it's going to, somebody's going to have an aha moment, going to create healing for somebody. So we got to do that. We have to do that. Yeah, we have to do that.
That's beautiful because community. I remember when we had the conversation, right? We had a conversation about a week ago. When we had the conversation and you were talking about community, it like, you know, when you already know something, but then you need somebody else to light that spark in you again, because together, it has a quote. It says, how was it? Like, together, you know, we can stand, or divided we fall, right?
Yeah.
Divided we fall. Let's stick on divided we fall. And it's the truth, because when we are not working together, we're working apart from each other, and we're not building.
It's like the hand fist metaphor, you know, like the strength of the fingers in the hand, the fist metaphor. I mean, I think, first of all, I actually believe that community is sort of innate for people of color. I think that our divisions are created by the society that we live in today. We oftentimes come together. In fact, the only reason that we survived is because we had community. The only reason. So I mean, I think it's you know, and I'm a big fan of Melodoma Somé and people who write about the power of African spirituality and it's all about what happens when we do ritual in community. So, you know, I'm not a big churchgoer, but like I know that what church does represent is ritual in community, and that has power. How we use that power is why we had the Southern Christian Leadership Council, why we had the Civil Rights Movement. That was ritual in power in service of liberation. So that's possible at any turn.
That's powerful. So let's talk about the healing part within community. Like, how can community help you heal? There's a lot of people who's probably afraid of community because maybe at one point in their life they've been hurt by somebody they trusted, and trust is one of your 4 pillars, right? So how can you bounce back?
Well, I think when we talk about community, the precursor to community is relationship. So you have to build relationship. I work with young people, right? I work in youth development. I can't just come in the room and just dump information in their head. I have to build a relationship with them that allows them to understand that I have their best interests at heart, that allows them to trust me. So what you have to do in community is create the spaces where people can then build relationship so that vulnerability is possible. Once vulnerability is possible, and I'm not talking about Brene Brown, white people vulnerability. I'm talking about vulnerability in the community. It's like, once that vulnerability is possible, then we can begin to have these quote unquote courageous conversations across lines about who we really are. But nobody's gonna do that right off the bat. So it's a time process. And I think if you're looking for a microwave solution to this, which often Americans are, then you're gonna be lost. But it's about building relationship. Relationship then becomes community. Community then becomes family.
And that's what we need. That's what we need in the world that we have today. And I'm happy that you shed light on those things, because those exact things, the community, the healing, you know, the rebirth, the coming, you know, just becoming a better person and growing through what you're going through. Because one of my favorite things to say, like on social media, is you grow through what you go through. And if you're not growing through what you're going through, then you're stagnant. And if you're stagnant and you're paralyzed, then you're no benefit to the community.
Again, your community is who holds you accountable, right? So you are engaging in ritual together, and ritual can simply mean breaking bread. It doesn't mean, you know, for those out there who are thinking ritual means we got to somehow like, you know, get the Holy Ghost. It does not mean that. You can enjoy, but like we can break bread in ritual, but like having ritual together and then having open sharing together and then the confidentiality of that space and then community. And so once I know who you are, once I know what your values are, then when I see you outside that lane, I can be like, yo, okay, I got that, but what about this?
Absolutely. It's like a brotherhood, right?
Yeah, and it's a brotherhood, but I mean, I want to come back to the word community because in relationship with sisters, in relationship with we all got to do this together. So there's a way in which sisters get to hold us accountable to how we show up in patriarchy and all that kind of shit. We get to hold them accountable. You know what I'm saying? So there's a way in which we get to do all of that. And I think that while that's happening, we're also building learning and capacity. So folks only know what they know. So it's not just like, let me hold you accountable. It's let me hold you accountable. Let me give you this book. Let me hold you accountable. Let's read this together. Let me hold you accountable. Let's watch this video. So like we're building our capacity for understanding, for emotional intelligence, for social emotional learning, whatever you want to call it, whatever the buzzword is. And that becomes the means by which we hold each other accountable, because all the other stuff, like the way we show up as providers, as men and all that kind of stuff, when we do that in the council of spirit and in the council of accountability, it's much more powerful than we do that when we do that in service of what we think this world is supposed to be about, material gain and all that is in excess.
And that's the amazing part of working as a community, keeping us each other accountable and really pushing each other and seeking the best out of each other. And also,
but I'm gonna add something though. Pushing but loving at the same time. Because sometimes we push out of our traumas.
Yeah.
So I see you doing something, it annoys the hell out of me because I also see it in myself, or my daddy used to do it. So being able to push you at the same time, hold you in a loving space at the same time, push you with compassion, push you with understanding. Most of the conditions that exist in our community have nothing to do with us.
So
I'm not saying we're not responsible, accountable, but I'm just saying that we didn't create it.
Yeah.
So, you know, like having some compassion, having love in that space along with that push.
So the people who push people without compassion, they need a dirt nap.
Well, I don't know who needs the dirt nap. I'm not gonna say who needs the dirt nap because that's not me to say. The dirt nap is something that comes for you. So, you know, all of us, I mean, you may not think about it right now, but I'm sure, you know, and I know you're a fairly young brother, but like we all have experiences in our lives that take us to the brink. That's what that's about. And when that happens, you have no control over that. The difference between coming back from that and being taken down from that is this experience I'm talking about in the dirt nap.
Yeah. I like the way you put that just now. I love the way you put that. So for the purpose of time, we can't. I mean, we could do it off camera. We could talk and I could learn and we could change information and all this. But where can people find you on either email or social media?
Yes, you can find me on email at ARC-Philosophy, it's ARK Philosophy, at Gmail. That's my consulting company that I do my work around the city in. As far as social media, I recently got off of social media just because, man, like the whole NSA and the Facebook piece and then also just, I had a very personal experience with someone just realizing that people can, social media allows us to produce ourselves. That may not be who you are at all. It's who you want to be, so that gives everybody a chance. It's so funny. It's like cult of personality. Everybody gets to produce their own sense of self. And I'm really a cat that, enjoys the, what's the opposite of the digital? Of the experience.
Just the real traditional way
this conversation that we're having now, I even have a text limit. If you text me more than 5 times and we're not planning to go somewhere, I'm like, I'll pick up the phone.
Okay. So
like,
you like to
what's
stay
up?
Off the grid.
Yeah, I just don't want to have a whole bunch of conversation that's mitigated through digital means. Like if I don't have to,
so we're completely opposite.
Yeah.
I'm here like, this, I'm checking likes, I'm checking comments, I'm checking pokes, I'm checking shares, I'm checking everything.
Yeah, but
it's business.
With that, I will tell you that I will be back on social media because I'm an artist, I'm a visual artist, and the bottom line is that even though I have a fairly successful career on the West Coast and here on the East Coast, it's hard to be an artist and not be on Instagram.
We have to continue this because I know that there's more in that brain of yours. I know that there's more.
Brain and heart.
The brain and the heart.
Yeah.
And I know that they work hand in hand to really enlighten the people in the audience. And I want to say cheers to you.
Cheers, brother.
And thank you very much for just making my night amazing.
Great, man.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You did good, man.
Look forward.
You did good. Thank you. I appreciate it. You will have more Life Through My Lens as we continue this show at another time. But thank you for tuning in to Life Through My Lens with your host, Keyshawn Scott, and the amazing guest, J Christopher.
Amazing everyday brother. Peace.